Are you feeling like you're making good progress on the book? I know we talked about it recently, and you had at least, 44 pages or so, and you were going to kind of keep chugging at it.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm at right now. I think I'm at about, it's slowed down. I think what ended up happening, I realized, I've been clocking that I'm at about 55,000 words in my second draft, and I'm about 50, 60 pages in. And what that means to me is that I have been deleting a lot of words and adding. It's sort of, so I've sort of like staying in the same, quasi the same amount of word count, which to me is a little bit weird, and I don't know what to make of it yet. But I also feel like the second draft that I'm sort of taking my iron to and just ironing out, I feel a lot stronger about, and I am writing a lot of scenes. I'm shooting a lot of film, you know what I mean? And I think you were very kind enough to look at the first 10,000 words and say, give me some feedback on it. And I am where I feel the first draft was just more of like, it started to become just the outline of what was going on and what was going where. Now I'm just trying to explore the whys and the hows and the emotional, reasoning behind things and flesh out the world a little bit more. So I really felt like I charged into it, and that first 10,000 words was continuing that world building that I have so much fun with. Now it's this sort of logistical thinking, now that I've gotten to, in my little crime novel, what the crime is. Now I have to coordinate all the things that I was thinking about. Where does this scene go? Well, who would be doing this at this time? What is this person going to be doing as a result of this action that I just had? So, and right. Exploring and discovering new things. And that's been very exciting, but I've deleted, I feel, almost as much as I've put in. So it's keeping me around 50 to 55,000 words. And, yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, because the part that you let me read felt like there was a lot there that was color and texture and flavor and those sorts of things about the world, and that the forward action needed to really take hold sooner, and that, like, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it was really neat to see that as part of your process, because the first version that you had sent, which was your rough draft that really kind of started as a rough draft, but then quickly moved into an outline, so much so that I stopped reading it because I'm like, oh, he's outlining here. Like, I know I can't add value to this. It was nice to see the next version, that first 10,000 of the next version, even though it was predominantly world building. It was fun to see how fully realized that world is. And so you're going through this activity of really painting out the entire canvas, before you start diving into the meat of the conflict. And I was thinking about it, like, okay, if I'm Tim and I'm working on this book, what would I do here? I don't know that writing it in sequence is something that I could feel confident to do. I was thinking, and I'm not really recommending this to you, I'm just kind of thinking about, well, how would I do this? I think I would have to go write basically the climax first, because you've got that big kind of film noir reveal, right? The kind of Poirot thing that's going to happen where the protagonist, unearths everything and sort of lays it out for everyone and makes the accusation, right? I mean, that is a thing that you're working towards, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like I would have to write that first, so that I know what the crime is, who did it, like here's what happened. And I know you've already worked through that stuff. Like, you probably know all that stuff. And I don't know how, and that all of this is me leading up to how are you approaching it. But I was just asserting that I think I would have to start there and then work backward from that, just so I know where it was going.
Sure. I did work a lot of it out leading up to my sitting down and actually physically starting the second draft. And I think one of the things that I'm struggling with is there will be a moment where I'm like, I don't really know what I want to write next. Like, what's going to happen next? Sequentially. And that is how I'm approaching this so far, writing it sequentially. Like, okay, this has happened. What happens? What am I going to write about next? Wait a minute. And I realize those moments are when I am fuzziest on what is actually happening in the overarching narrative. So those are little, so I realized, oh, wait a minute, I don't know what happens next because this is one of those details that what was this relationship of this character to the crime or to this moment or this thing? And so those are just things that I need to work out. And I think what's happening is that I'm stressing about the, we were just talking about the fact that it takes, for you, it took a while in that first 10,000 words. It's like, hey, let's get to the action. Let's not, we don't need to like color this whole thing up. And for me, I was like, well, I don't mind that it's taking a long while to get to here, but that's because I was envisioning the book being longer. So in other words, please don't take this as me comparing to anything, but for example, doesn't the Lord of Rings take 6 hours to explain something and then you finally get into some action or something? I don't know how the books read. I never read them.
Right.
I just sort of feel like it's the proportion. If the book turns out to be 100,000 words and I've still got the first 10,000 words where I'm just sort of filling in who's doing what and where they're doing it, then I don't mind that we still haven't found our problem yet, our inciting incident. But this is where my stress is coming in, and I really appreciate the feedback that you gave me, because in saying, hey, this isn't moving forward, I'm sort of looking at the word count that I'm still at, going, oh, I really haven't added anything. I'm still in this place at the same amount of words. Maybe I do need to shuffle some things around.
Yeah,
some things around.
I don't want you to feel like first of all, I'm not telling you how to write your book ever at any time. Will I do that? No. Right. You know that. My thought is,
yes, because it would be easier for me if you did. So
no, it would be a surefire way to tank it as a flaming, dumpster fire. No, for sure. Because of my vast novel writing experience. No, but I mean, look, we're all readers, right? And we're all conscientious readers, and we kind of know what we like. I'm very upfront with, I like shorter books. This is very good information for me to have, that you envision your novel to be very long. That's great. I do think that you can slow roll the beginning the way that you're envisioning without any real problem. But I do think that it should do more than just unfurl in front of the reader as, look how quaint and wonderful this setting is. And I think, in the second draft, you're not going to have to sweat the kinds of things that I was pointing out. It's really the final draft, the fifth, sixth, seventh, whatever, it ends up being for you. There's got to be a hook, right? So the narrative hook needs to be in there. And I think it's just dropping breadcrumbs, and you've got a few things in there. Yeah. I forget the character's name, but it's the person who comes on at 6 a.m. It starts with an S. What's their name? Satyana or something like that. Oh,
geez.
Yeah.
The cart wrangler at the grocery store.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the cart wrangler finding some seemingly important things that it's clear the way that you wrote it. Oh, I should tuck this away. This might be useful in the future. And the fact that it was so funny, because I don't know the story, Tim. I don't know the crime. I don't know what happens. But the way you wrote it, they found a coffee cup inside of a duffel bag and just chucked the coffee cup. And I'm like, no, that's evidence. Wait, I don't even know what happened, but that's got to be something. Wait a minute. Don't just throw it away. Yeah. So that was really interesting. And then Captain Pellersby, the part where he was sort of holding court over the food court, I thought was delightful. I'm just like, oh, this guy is loving his position of power and relevance. He is the biggest fish in the smallest pond. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, there's plenty of good stuff going on. I think, as you go back through it again and again, it's really just about which breadcrumbs do I drop to tease that something significant is on the horizon. And that'll keep people kind of pulling forward in the narrative as you color by numbers and paint out the world. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about how much of an improvement draft 2 is over draft 1, just the portion that I read. So I hope you took away from my feedback. Keep going. Just keep doing it, because it's going to be good.
Yeah. And I think for me, I'm really riding off the experience of having written a longer piece for Hodgepodge that came out in April, writing this longer piece and then being very influenced. Like, I love seeing it visually. And this idea for me, one of the things that's been very helpful is like, my friends in high school, Eric and Scott and I, we used to go to the movies, and then because we were just jerks or idiots or whatever, but we used to love leaving the movie and being like, what was wrong with that movie? Not, we weren't like Siskel and Eberting, but it was just, I think the general, you leave a movie and you're like, what in the hell was that about? And so it kind of became a game where we would be like, how would we have fixed that? Like, what would have made us feel better about, the choice that the character made, or this, that, and the third. And so it's been nice to kind of revisit that, because writing my own novel, I'm like, what would I want to have? What needs to happen next? In a movie that I'd want to see, or a book that I'd want to read, what is the next thing that I'd want to see? It doesn't make sense if this giant emotional moment has happened. I can't go to this person, or I can't go there. Why don't I continue it and play with that and see what happens? So it's been a lot of fun to kind of do in the process. And I think that I'm just trying to do something that you usually do in the first draft, which is to just write a bunch. And I know that there's stuff that's going to be cut. And I think, since we're the Tiffin Writing Workshop, just trying to point something out that you mentioned about my first draft that I'm doing myself, and I might have already mentioned here in this space in the corner booth, is I finish a scene and then I write notes about the scene that I have. Like, I'm not calling them chapters, I'm calling them parts for right now, because I feel like chapters, this is my own personal thing, I feel like chapters are long things that have different parts, smaller parts in them. And I'm just going part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. And at the end of each part, I'm writing notes to myself about, hey, here's a detail that I really think I need to think about and fix. And what's been helpful for that is I'm trying to go on a sort of 5 days of writing, and then the 6th day going back and fixing those notes. And that's been very, very helpful because it's in the text. I sometimes get nervous. When I first sat down to do this, the second draft, I had a split screen with the old draft and then a copy of the old draft that I just renamed as new draft. And then I was just sort of starting to work on that. And then I sort of realized 2 or 3 days into it, wait a minute, I'm not looking at the old draft at all. I'm just rewriting what's here. There's already stuff here. And that was a big relief because, as I've said before, in the past, when I've done second drafts, I just rewrite the whole thing referencing the old draft. So this was really, 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 really great. All of my notes are in one document and they're in the book. And there are times when I highlight certain passages because I'm like, I think this is an important idea. Let's see if I need to go back to this and play with this. And then the other thing is I have one document, but that's the document that I talked about where I have all of my characters and I just started writing out who they are, what they want, and then also the major, the conflict, the major issue, the crime that has to be solved. So it's really, really been helpful for me as a writer. And I'm sure other people have, we all know the Post-it note thing off to the side or however you may do it. For me, it's very, very helpful after each part or chapter or however you want to call it, just to write those notes to myself, to reference, to go back and say, oh, you know what? That's right. I don't like that name. And boy, we should talk about names too. But the notes are very, very helpful.
Yeah. And then you think about different ways to approach that work. Some people will plot out the entire story arc, and kind of use those Post-its up front to organize whole sections and then begin the writing process. What you're doing is writing almost by vibe coding, by instinct. And you're sort of saying, okay, well, here's what I think needs to come next. And then at the end of that, you're providing notes that give you either a new direction or something to come back and think about later. which is very, very useful. And you're like, all right, well, what's the next section? So I don't think one's better than the other. It really is just how does your brain organize the work and what makes it flow more easily? And that's the way you should do it.
Yeah.
So if you found a way that you feel opens the spigot without too much effort, do that.
Yeah. I've also found myself in this strange situation where I have an instinct to do something, but I'm sort of bound by these sort of strange rules that no one has given me, but I believe is how other authors work. Like for some reason, I keep going back to The Thin Man, the film The Thin Man. And I even that is probably super irritating to some authors out there that are like, you're writing a book. Why do you keep talking about movies? I love movies. I love the visual quality of movies. And one of the things that I love about The Thin Man from, I don't know, was it 1932? I can't remember. William Powell, Myrna Loy. And some of those great noir films is that you might have a small scene stitched in that just gives us another character for like a brief moment. And so part of me goes, well, I can't do that. How am I going to do that, in a novel? Cormac McCarthy's not out there writing a part or a chapter that's only 3 sentences long. And I'm like, wait a minute. My impulse is to kind of do that, to have a little bit of fun of it. Because for me, the chapter, I'm calling them chapters, but I actually call them parts in my second draft. Some of them are shorter than others, and some of them are this one that I've just completed just 2 days ago is very, very, very long and brings us to the inciting incident, which changes this everyday existence into the mystery that we have to solve. And part of me just wants to. It's like building a mixtape for me. Where you have songs of different textures and different volumes and different lengths. And sometimes after something that's really, really long and drawn out and is giving us a lot of action, I just want to give it some lightness and something very, very short. But it has to be something that's very, very short that ties into the thing as a whole. So that's something that I'm also trying to play with, much like sentence length in a small piece or a piece of microfiction. I'm kind of wondering how the part length can affect how you read the book. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. Let me restate.
I was really hoping you were just going to come back and go, no.
No, right? No, let me make sure that I understand what you're asking. If you have a bunch of small parts, let's say each chapter, you're calling it a part, and it's basically one contiguous scene. Maybe it's 2 to 3 pages, right? Because that's kind of where they are now. They're pretty short.
Yeah.
And you've got a long novel, a novel that's 90,000, 100,000 words, but you're doing it in, 2 to 3 pages a piece. You're going to have like 250 chapters. So like, is that a problem?
Yeah.
I don't think it's a problem, but at some point, feedback that you might get from beta readers would be, hey, why? And so as long as there's a justification for it, I think that makes sense. And even if you are organizing it into discrete small segments, you'll probably still find that you want to organize it into real parts where maybe each scene or sequence is a chapter, and that's a pretty short chapter, but that you're consolidating those chapters into larger parts. Part 1, the introduction of all the people, and also the inciting incident. And that might be the first 40 chapters, but it's part 1. And then part 2 is the crime is exposed. And that might be another 35 chapters that are each, 2 to 3 pages a piece. So like it's a style thing, I think. I don't really think it matters. But you will want to be able to answer why. Like, what value does that add, or how does that change the experience from something that's more standard or traditional? But I don't think there's any rules that you can't do it that way, if that's what you want to do.
So let's say I'm sitting in the office of Miss Simon and Mr. Schuster in this crazy world, and they're like, why? Is a shrug good enough of an answer for them, or do I have to come up with something serious?
Did they give you an advance yet? Because if they've already given you the advance, I think the shrug is fine.
Good call. Good call. Good call.
You know?
But I mean, it's just, I feel maybe because, maybe I'm sort of answering my own question here, because to me, I'm sort of trying to play this out like I would like a favorite movie of mine. I love seeing things visually. I don't know how many times I've said that. And I apologize to everyone out there. I owe you all a penny the next time I say it. So for me, maybe it's more, these different sections, whether I'm calling them parts or chapters, are just scenes that I see playing out visually in my head that help me understand what would have to come next for the narrative. And also obviously that plays to, because all narratives have to make sense. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess I would have to have an answer as to what I would call it. And you raise a very, very, very good point. I could collect all of these parts that are just introducing the world, and there's your chapter 1, and then, or section 1, or act 1, or whatever. So yeah, definitely something to think about. But for me, it's just, it just helps to kind of break it up and here's what we're cutting to next while this thing is happening. And,
I'm sorry, let me jump in for a sec. I've seen different books change points of view, and you do that a lot in this draft, where you are inhabiting the first person point of view of many different characters. You might find, that telling the story from different points of view and consolidating those in a very specific or methodical manner tells you how to organize the chapter breaks, tells you how to package this. Because I've seen books where it basically tells the same thing, but from different points of view. And so each chapter is a different person's perspective on the same thing that happened. And so the reader kind of tracks through seeing the event unfold from different angles and getting new or conflicting information as that happens. I'm not recommending that for this book, but that's just like one approach. And so, yeah, just keep writing. I think, an interesting way to organize the content will emerge.
Yeah. And part of me is also hoping, this is a big hope that, if I've written something that I really, really like, that's for some reason, I'm thinking a lot about photography right now. Sometimes someone will be in front of my camera and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I've got this, I don't know, mole on my wrist." And it's like, look, if they're looking at the mole on your wrist and not your face, which is what we're here for, then that's my fault. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. There are things that don't matter in the bigger picture, and maybe part versus chapter doesn't matter. But right. Again, maybe as I write, that thing will come out.
Yeah. And to not worry about it at this stage, I think is the right thing to do. So you've made a decision how you're going to organize this draft, and you just stay consistent there. And then when you come back again after the thing is finished and you start going for round 3 and 4 and whatever, you may choose to make a fundamental change. And that is your right as the creator of that universe. So, just own that. Wear that championship belt.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll tell you, this is like night and day from the way that I'm approaching that screenplay that I'm working on, because I am not doing the equivalent of vibe coding and like getting in there and writing little pieces of it. I am really looking at it from an end-to-end point of view and trying to figure out the entire story before I start. And I think usually I would say, "Oh man, you can't do that because then blah." But like, to me, a film has such a, it's not a rigid structure, but it has like a very plain organizational structure that you can kind of drop a story into, that I feel very comfortable that if I just know the motivations of the characters, the problem that's at hand, and kind of get that stuff set, that I can slot it into the story format. And have it be very pleasing and satisfying. And so far, I've been really happy with it. So I started drafting this thing probably back in late January, early February, I guess. And by mid-February, I had a version with a selling pitch that I really wanted to start shopping around. I sent it to a couple of people, and they said they liked it. But then I came back to it. We talked about this, I think, in a recent episode, where I came back to it with a new monocle where I wanted to find tired tropes, and it was just filled with them. So I'm like, all right, well, I want to revisit this. I like some of what's happening, but we got to steer out of the skid here. We can't just make it, a plain Jane normal thing.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that, and I now have a new version that is completely different from the old version. Although the setting, some of the characters are similar, but like it's pretty different in their motivations and the complexity of the characters. And I'm really, really happy about it. I'm not quite ready to show it to folks, but I hope to be, within a few more days, maybe. So I'll be sending that to you. I'll send you the 1-pager, not the 13-page full-length treatment that I have. I'll send you the one sheet, and then you can tell me if you want to see the 13-pager. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it's going, because I now know enough about the story, the problem, how it ought to resolve, the character dilemmas. I know enough about all of that I'm now able to start seeing some of the changes and complications that come in Act 2, because that's always been my problem. Like I think my issue was I never knew enough about the characters or the problem that I could imagine what happened between minute 30 and minute 75, right? I just didn't know what happened in the middle of the movie. And so that was always my thing. Like I could set it up and I could think of a cool ending, and then I'm like, what goes in the middle? I have no idea. So it's just because I just never knew the people well enough or the problem well enough. But now that I know the people well enough, it's like, oh, well, in order to get to here, we have to have this, we got to go over here, we got to do this. And then I'm like, oh man, am I going to have enough time to do everything? And that's such a great problem to worry that I'm not going to have enough time to finish or enough time to kind of hit all the story beats that I need. So it's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, if you don't have enough time, that's what sequels are for.
Sure.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. Send it. I'll take the 13-page. I don't care. Give me all of it.
Okay. I'll send you both. And that way you can dip a toe in the water with the 1-pager.
With the 1-pager and then get into the more detail. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about one of the things that you mentioned in the notes, and just so that we could touch upon it a little bit. Man, I hate naming characters. I really do. And one of the things that I've done with this novel, I mean, a lot of times when I was writing science fiction, or when I do write science fiction, it's so easy to make a name up. You know what I mean? I think if I remember correctly, Donald Glover, who is Childish Gambino, got the name Childish Gambino as his musical alter ego from a Wu-Tang Clan name generator. And so, it's very easy in science fiction, or sometimes when you're picking names, to do that. But a long time ago, I had a friend of mine that I was in a bookstore with. I talked about this with you. I think I just texted this to you the other day. But to put it here, a friend of mine and I were at a bookstore, and he picked up a novel that had just been made into a movie. So, of course, the cover of the novel had the movie poster with the actor in it. I can't remember what it was, and he was just saying, he was like, I really hate the fact that whenever a book gets made into a movie, they put the movie poster on the cover, because I like to imagine who I like to imagine in the books. And, I don't want somebody telling me who is, playing the part of the lead, for example, or any of the other characters. And so that's always stuck with me. And I've always been interested in trying to get away with not really describing characters too much out of maybe what they're wearing, because I love that idea of having people being able to cast the book in their heads, so to speak. And so for this novel that I've been working on, there are like a ton of names, and I've just been sort of coming up with names. And the thing is, I've been more interested in writing the book itself than really thinking about the names. And I have discovered in my second draft, I pretty much hate all of the names that I have. So I'm working on that. I'm working on it. I mean, Madeline Tin, which is the main character in this book, that just was for me the inciting incident of writing this book. Was my partner Jen was in the kitchen, and she was like, "You know what? I can't find my Madeline tin." And sounds bougie, but she just really likes Madeleines. And that was like, what a great name! That's it. That's the name. Let's go from there. Let's see if we want to do that. And so, outside of that name, I've been like, these are stupid. I've been just trying to come up with names that don't give that don't place a person in someone's mind, that aren't very, sometimes I make a choice, like no disrespect if you're out there, but Chad to me, I like using for a very specific type of person. Usually someone that's on a boogie board and owns a tech company that's going to kill us all through environmental disaster. But otherwise it's just like other names. I'm just like, what am I going to call this person? What am I going to? And so, yeah, I think you mentioned that as well. You were like, I think some of these are reaching a little bit.
Yeah. The interesting thing about like every name that you had was offbeat, I think is how I put it. And so it's not a name that you would see in the real world frequently, if ever. And I think if you do that a couple, 3 times, that's not a problem at all. But if you've got 20 to 25, which I think you do, new characters, and they each have an offbeat name, the cognitive load is just tough for me to remember who's who. And so, like one of the names that really stuck with me, was Captain Pellerby was dealing with, 2 different people who were both named Sam. And that worked really well because you called them the Sams, and like, I don't have to work maybe I'm just lazy, but I don't have to work very hard to remember that. And it's something that kind of tethers who that is and what their relationship is to Captain Pellersby. Like they're interchangeable, and he's sort of directing them like he would direct, people in the military or whatnot was my sense of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a few ways you can go with it. I was wondering if you were allowing point of view characters to make up their own fantasy world, and that those names that you were expressing weren't actually the people's real names. It was just whoever was talking about them, what they called them. You know what I mean? So names can be whatever you need them to be. But I do think that, if you're going to make me as the reader work hard to remember a weird name, I just want it to pay off. So I'm not saying you can't do it or that you shouldn't do it, but it's got to have a reason. Yeah, that's all. So,
there's a couple different things. I think I mentioned to you the thought of maybe heading back into like doing a Google search and being like, what are famous names from the 1880s? And just calling a bunch of people Eustace or something.
Yeah.
So who knows?
No, I did the same thing. I actually did a Google search for the character that I am writing about in my screenplay. I think she was born in the 90s. And so I said, what was a popular girl's name in 1991? And I confirmed that what I had called her was actually something that someone from that time would be named. And her husband, I confirmed that as well. And they're kind of boring names. Like they're not super original, but they're very consistent with, what time frame they are from and who they represent. So I was comfortable with it.
Yeah. I love the idea. I think the more I think about it, I'm trying to write a novel that's sort of something that you might find in an 80s Tim Burton vein. So something that's kind of weirdly out there that's not really placed in the real world. And so, I just landed on that. So I'm going to have to give that some thought, and maybe that'll help propel some of the book as well. So
the way that Edward Scissorhands is like in hypercolor, and everything is
it's exactly what I thought of.
Yeah. No, I could totally see that. But then I think the question you have to ask yourself is, how do you signal that to the reader that that's what's happening, and signal it over and over and over again so that they really understand, okay, we're not trying to represent reality. We're trying to filter reality through this. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's just fun to play with. And again, unfortunately, the second draft will be something that I think I would be able to give to beta readers to say, this is the novel. This is how it's going to work. And then I kind of feel like what's going to need to happen is drafts 3 or 4 are where I feel like I'm looking forward to doing the things like, what? This character says this early on in the book, but they do this in the end. What if we change this just to lead just that sort of detail work of like enhancing it. So I'm feeling like I'm in a happy place, and I'll also feel very good that I get super stressed when I'm not able to get back to the work to keep it going.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that means that your mind is eager to return to it, which means you're going to do it, at full power, which is great. I wonder though, I would love to know what the crime is. Like I really would like kind of a sneak peek into the narrative arc of the book. Do you have that? Is that something that you could share with me, or do you not have that?
Oh yeah, somebody's stolen some money from the safe of one of the businesses at this mall.
Yeah, oh, never mind. We're recording. Anyway, yes. Cool. Yes, I would love to know more about that at a later time.
Yes. Somebody's stolen money from the Chess King, which is a store located in this mall. And, I'm playing with a bunch of ideas right now. Like, part of me wants to make it a very inconsequential amount of money because of what I want the book to do, what I want the folks in the book to do, and what I'm trying to speak to. But we'll see. We'll see. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm drawing a lot of influence from the Cornetto trilogy. So I love all of the dialogue of those Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg movies, and that's something that will either sink or swim, because I do know that some of my dialogue that I've been writing for the second draft, there's definitely that red flag is coming up, being like, all right, this is a little gratuitous. You can have your fun with this, but this is going to have to be one of those things that you have to cut later on. But anyway, so
yeah, well, you did tell me that you were writing specifically overwriting in the number of words so that you could kind of trim back to the right, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And you've always said it's easier to cut than add. So I'd be exhausted writing that way, but I think for you that works, and keep doing it, because you definitely have a lot there that you can work with. And if you can just kind of trim it down to the tight muscle of the scene, then it's going to be that much better. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, the overwriting just becomes part of that improv background that I have, where it's just, you never know what's going to pop up unless you explore it. So through these scenes of dialogue, one of the characters might say something that I'm like, that's a good idea. I know what this was going to happen. Yeah, that's of course they would want that. Let's see where that alley is going to take us. So, been fun. But I'm hoping that when we come back to our next chapter of our own podcast, I'll have a lot more to talk about. And wouldn't it be nice if I even had the whole gosh darn thing second drafted?
I mean, yeah, that would. If you're as motivated as you sound, and if we take as much time off as I would like, yes, you should have a full draft. Just for the folks out there, we do tend to do shorter seasons. They end up being, anywhere from 21 to 26 episodes, give or take. Since we come out weekly and have full-time jobs and significant others and many responsibilities, the hiatus is really important, especially as working writers, trying to kind of push our own work forward. We do need to take the break. And I'm really looking forward to the break because I'm on the cusp of feeling like a professional writer again. I know last year I actually had a paid gig, so I technically was a professional writer. But famously, we talked about that at the beginning of this season, and it was a big womp womp as far as accomplishment. I made a bunch of money, but none of the work actually made the light of day. So it was disheartening. So this season, I've been looking for what can I do to kind of push my own work forward and have something that I would really be proud of. And through the season, I stumbled on screenwriting, which is a very odd thing. But it's because it forces me to confront some of my shortcomings. I expressed earlier this season that my dialogue is only okay, and that I really need to get better at dialogue. There's no better way to get better at dialogue than either writing a play or writing a screenplay, right? Because it's so much dialogue.
Yeah.
So I leaned into that hard, and I'm like, all right, well, let me pick a medium where I have to do that, and I'm going to get better at it, darn it. The other thing is I've always had a hard time seeing plotting from end to end. And I really dove into the idea of, okay, well, a screenplay format has a plotting device that you can follow, and it's not paint by numbers or color by numbers. You have to tell a good story. You have to have interesting people. You have to have a compelling conflict. So you don't get to skip over all of the stuff that you have to do just because there's a format, but the format helps you organize it. So for those two reasons, I found screenwriting really compelling. And then it just so happened that I had an idea that was in the backyard, for 25 plus years. And then I got, a wild hair and started working on it. So it's been a really good, learning season for me. And I'm hopeful that I can come back, for the start of chapter 7, when we kick this back off, and have something substantial done. Like I feel really good about it. So that's what I'm going to use the hiatus for, is actually to write the screenplay.
That's great. And is there any thought to the stuff that you produced in the workshop?
Yeah. So I've put out, I've submitted a couple of stories, or actually one story twice from the workshop. And I do have some things that I think are worth working on. And I would like to pursue that because they are very short. And I think that I could, if I had a kind of a focused burst, I could get, one of those kind of ready to go in a week and then send that out and then burst on another one at a later time for a week and kind of get that revised and sent out. I mean, if you have something that's only 100, 200, 400 words long, you can kind of grind many, many versions of that throughout a week and get to a place where you're comfortable. But I don't have the intense desire to publish. It sounds stupid. I feel kind of stupid saying it out loud, but I just don't think enough of myself at this point to think that what I'm doing, needs to be out in the world. Like I'm not proud of what I'm writing. And I think it's because I'm kind of latched on to this other learning experience. I like to learn new things, and I learn by doing. And so when I, caught the wave back in like 2016, for whatever reason, the temperature of the water was right. And I said, I want to learn how to design board games. Like, I don't know where that even came from, but I pitched it to a couple of friends and said, I'm going to start a board game company. You want to start with me? And they both said yes. So I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay, cool. Well, I guess I better learn how to do this. So then I started diving into all these different podcasts and books and playing a lot of games and trying to design my own stuff and failing fast and fixing, fail and fix until it's good. And I learned through brute force how to design board games. And I am very comfortable saying I'm good at it now. So I feel like, having taken so much time off from writing, I almost had to start over when we started the show. And initially my work was to kind of make a decent show, So I was putting more work into the show than I was into my own work. You weren't. You were actually pushing hard on your own work. And I saw, your rise, really a logarithmic increase in your capacity and your publications and whatnot. And I'm so proud of you because you're just doing really, really good stuff. And so I'm like, okay.
Shucks, man.
Well, shucks. But I don't look at the success that you've had and your trajectory and go, man, I need to catch up to Tim. Like at all. I look at Tim and I'm like, look, hey man, Tim's reaching for the stratosphere. That's fantastic. I still can't write friggin' dialogue. So like, I guess I better go back to the, better Werner von Braun my ass and get back to the drawing board and figure out how to write dialogue.
Sure.
So that's where I am. It's like, I still feel like I want to tinker with the design of my rocket. You've already lit the fuse on yours. I'm still designing mine, but I'm fine with that. Like it's fine. I've got plenty of other things that keep me busy. And I enjoy doing the show. The show's a lot of fun. So I will get there eventually. When I feel like I'm writing something worth reading, I'll put it out there, and if somebody wants to read it, then great. And if not, then that's fine too.
That's the important thing. It's following what really drives you creatively, and I think I sometimes joke with you about this, about the Tiffin and writing workshop, that it's, writing is just one thing in myriad ways of creative outlet. And for you, the gaming thing is so interesting to me, and your success with the football game, breakaway football.
Yes,
the success of that is just great, and that's something I think is very, very, very important to also say. Is I tend to go on social media and get a serious case of FOMO when I see folks publishing. And publishing as much as they do, or winning awards, or getting to the top. And I'm just like, I got to do that. I got to do that. I got to do that. But, ever since that interview we had with Eric Scott Tryon, whose new book, I'm the Undertow, is out and available. when he was saying that he really doesn't let something out of the house unless he feels it's 100%. And I know that there are a ton of pieces that I've left out of the house because I'm more interested in getting published than having something that I feel like, yeah, that's the thing that I wanted to say.
Yeah.
That's the voice and the style that I want people to know is mine. And so that's really kind of, it's good and bad for good and bad reasons. Now I'm like, is this ready? And I don't want to get too caught up in like, well, I need it to be 100%. Maybe there can be like a 98% somewhere, or a 95% somewhere.
That's
because sometimes you just have to know, and you have to be like, look, this is where this piece is. This is good. Why don't we just call this a day?
Yeah.
So it's been really nice because it's helped me to focus more on work that I have and not be so. I think it was just for myself to be like, look, I can do it. I am a published author. I've got stuff out there. But sometimes I've definitely felt like there's work that I have out there that I'm just like, oh, well.
Yeah.
I remember, there have been things that have been accepted when I had the brain blast of how to do, there might have been a small segment of a short story that I realized, oh, I know what I can fix. And then suddenly, hey, we like this. We're going to publish it. And it's like, oh, well, shit.
Right. Well, no, that's a great point. I remember being in the headspace that you just described when I first got out of my MFA degree, and I had submitted one of the stories from really the best story from my thesis, and it got published. And I felt like I was riding high, and I was like an addict. I wanted that sensation again immediately, put it in a needle and inject it in my arm. So I went out and took a story that really was substandard. It was like the next one that I had close, and I whipped it into shape. And looking back on it, not a very good story, but I did the same process where I printed it, because this is a long time ago, gang, printed it on paper, put it in envelopes, put stamps on the envelopes, mailed it, hand wrote the, the addresses. Like, this is a long time ago, guys. But yeah, just blasted it out to like 50 places and got 50 rejections over the course of like 3 months. And I was crestfallen because I felt like, oh, did I get lucky with the first one? Can I repeat this?
Yeah.
Like, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And so my life completely changed. It wasn't because of that experience. I pivoted to new things. I met my wife. I moved into a completely different headspace, and I kind of stopped writing for like 20 years. And we've talked about that before, but it wasn't because I had a publication, then got a rejection and said, oh, I can't do it anymore. It wasn't, but I remember that sensation of, oh, I gotta double down. I gotta triple down. I gotta keep this going because I need another hit, just one more taste, that kind of thing. It really felt like a drug at that point. So anyway, fast forward to now, I think the reason I'm not so interested in publishing is that I actually feel like I'm protecting myself from my own, it's not FOMO, but I feel like I'm protecting myself from my own, quick shooting from the hip, quick shot, hair trigger release, that kind of thing. Cause I'll write something and I'll feel like it's great and I'll want to send it out immediately. And even if I let it sit for a day, I tend to still have that kind of glow of having just written it and feeling good about what its potential is. And I can't see how ugly the baby is. I can only see how beautiful its potential is. Right. So, so I'm really trying to save myself from myself, in that sense that I need to have a lot of time between writing something and feeling comfortable sending it out. And so that might be what's at work here. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's always going to change. I think it's always going to change. I think that there are times when, sometimes there is a deadline, like a certain lit mag that you're really interested in might have a deadline for something. And you're like, you know what? Deadline's in 5 minutes. This is the best I've got for right now. Let's see what happens. So it's always a moving target, but the good thing is that we just keep trying, I guess.
So let's set our target. No, I agree. Let's set our targets for the beginning of next season. I will go first. Since we're going to be coming back in a few months, I'm going to have a completed long treatment for sure, because you're going to get the short one and the long one here in the next week or so anyway. But I will have a first draft of the script ready to go by the next season.
Yes. Okay. Good. My turn. I'm going to try and have my second draft of my novel, my book, finished and ready for people to read, or really, really close to the end. And I also think one of the things that I'd like to do is I feel like I got a really decent amount of material from the the workshop we did together in March on microfiction. And so I'm kind of like trying to figure out how I can get another chapbook put together. So the focus is on the novel, but of course I will be trying to work on some shorter pieces as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
That sounds fantastic. So everybody out there, thank you for joining us for Chapter 6. We're closing that off, and be sure to come back for Chapter 7 when we come back after our hiatus. Tim, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for continuing to do this with me. It's a lot of fun.
As always, Art, bestie of besties. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.